Organised crime syndicates are flooding the South African market with fake medicines. Willem Els of the Institute for Security Studies and Richard Chelin, an independent governance specialist, are here to talk about it. Welcome, Richard, and welcome, Willem.
Thank you, Chris.
Thank you, Chris. Thanks for having us.
You're welcome. Willem, back in 2021 already, the Institute warned when there were raids on fake COVID-19 vaccines that was just the start. What was that warning based on?
Yeah, I think that's a very good question. Back then we were still with the INACT program that worked across Africa on organized crime. And that became quite a contentious issue here in South Africa, but not limited to South Africa. We identified that as as a regional challenge and maybe also a continental challenge. But having focused on our part of the continent, we looked at that. But that is why we are so fortunate, because the author of that opinion piece is actually joining us today. So, Richard, welcome. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Willem.
Then you are the person to tell us how the pandemic changed the operations of organized crime syndicates and how it evolved into such a crisis.
No, definitely. Thank you very much once again for having me. Back in 2020, it was, how I came about it was I just took a drive around in the city of Johannesburg, and then and in other cities as well. You would have seen little posters saying 100 rand for vaccine, and that started raising the questions of really, is that true, or is that just one of those gimmicks that we see? You walk in town and you see little stickers there. But upon digging deeper, we started to realize that there is an issue in terms of illicit pharmaceuticals. And we knew about it because back in 2019, as Willem mentioned in the ENAC program, they were doing research on counterfeit pharmaceuticals. But that was mostly in West Africa, Central Africa, where we had a big issue. But when we started seeing the COVID vaccines, and then a few weeks later, there was this big seizure of fake vaccine in one of the hardwares. And I think it was in Germiston, if I'm not mistaken. The raid was about 2,400 fake doses of COVID-19 vaccine. So at that time, it was quite small. It was, sporadic. There was not really a big, massive market around it. But I think, like we will probably delve more in depth as we go ahead in this interview, is that's the one thing with organized criminals and networks. They evolve, they adapt. And if they are not addressed at that point, then they capitalize on it. And I would say that research back then raised that alarm. It's like, beware of what's coming. We didn't know what was coming, but I think as time progressed, we had now in a situation where, sadly, unfortunately, we have to say, there was a warning around that. But today we've seen that these networks have transitioned from fake vaccines to, replicating everyday high demand lifestyle, other types of pharmaceutical products.
Willem, the World Health Organization has warned that a very high percentage of global counterfeit pharmaceuticals can be found on the African continent. What makes Southern Africa such a lucrative market?
Indeed. And, Africa itself, it became the dumping ground of a lot of things, especially on the crime side of it. But what makes South Africa so special and so lucrative for them? We are the leading economy in the region, and also in most of Africa. We've got a very good banking system. We've got a lot of our communications, or the infrastructure that is here, that is wonderful for business. It's wonderful for communications, but it also serves as a very good tool for your organized crime syndicates. And add to that the gaps in governments, the porous borders, the lack of policy application, the rule of law that is not always applied, etc. Our weak systems in terms of policing, in terms of prosecution, etc. all of that actually created a perfect storm for these organized crime syndicates to thrive in our environment.
So, what are the most common illicit pharmaceuticals flooding the market right now?
So, from our part, what we see because of the abuse of especially your over-the-counter drugs, is your codeine based of especially your cough syrups and all of those that is codeine based, and they are being used just as it is by children and by addicts, and then also what we see is they are using it to cut it with, for instance, heroin and all the other things. It's not a standalone. And then the second thing that we also started to pick up is that especially your antihistamines that you can buy over the counter, they are very, very popular, but also it's very easy for them to counterfeit them and to produce these fake products and flood the market because of the demand in this area.
Are we also seeing fake medicines in the chronic treatment department, cancer, TB, HIV?
That I will have to refer to Richard. He was the one that did the research on that side. So thank you, Richard.
No, thanks, Willem. Thanks, Chris. I would say, it's a bit difficult to kind of specifically target. Whenever there's a market, there will be, criminal syndicates in it. But the one thing we've seen is, anti-diabetic kind of medications, lifestyle drugs. I think that's quite big because that's where everybody is now. Everybody wants to lose weight without, going to the gym or running around or running or exercising, right? So and that's has created a market for that. We started to see a lot of that, and lifestyle drugs, weight loss tablets, etc., and antibiotics predominantly. But and with all of it, I think the one aspect is sometimes we might say, but if we talk about codeine that's fake, that's dangerous, so that should be targeted. But lifestyle drug, I mean, if it's just doses of water or whatever it is that they put into it, the chemicals that they use that are not the real chemicals and do not have the right doses and stuff. But I think the challenges is sometimes I think it's something we've seen as well in the response is that if it's not that dangerous, then we can put our efforts elsewhere. Especially in regard to law enforcement and policies and stuff. Resources is we rather tackle hard drugs like heroin, methamphetamines. These are dangerous. These kill our kids. But pharmaceuticals, there's little awareness as well, not only in terms of the action or the responses, but as well from the side of the public. So going back to what you originally asked, there are a broad range of it. Sometimes we see it, and very often it will come out in the media after a seizure happens. Very often I mention it. I call it a reactive response, and we need more of a proactive response going forward. What is out there, and unfortunately, there's quite little research actually done in that area. I mean, even how these drugs are found is people report them. And if people don't report it, then we wouldn't know, which also doesn't mean that it's not there. But having said that, I would say, your lifestyle drugs, your anti-diabetics and your antibiotics are the key ones that we've come across.
Healthcare matters, but what matters most?
Having cover for the people who keep this business going.
Bonitas is there for you when it counts. Bonitas, medical aid for South Africa. Visit bonitas.co.za and find your plan.
The worldwide craze for weight loss injections must be a hell of a boon to these organized criminals.
No, definitely. And it's about making money. And like Willem always says, it's criminals will always go for low risk, high rewards. And unfortunately, for us, but fortunately for the criminal networks, is that this is one of those low risk, high rewards. Because even if they get caught, what happens? Are our legislation strong enough? Is the punishment strong enough, right? And very often we see that that's not the case. So yeah, I would say, if tomorrow there's something else that comes into the market in the form of, a pharmaceutical product, we will find criminals there. It's as long as the market is open, as long as it's a demand and supply, right? And low risk, high reward environment will always be attractive and lucrative for these syndicates.
Well, still on the topic of organized crime, I'm sure you have seen the breaking news that a magistrate has refused or rejected the plea deal by tenderpreneur Cat Matlala.
That is correct, Chris. We look at Cat Matlala and we look at why he's there, and we see that it's all drug related. It's all corruption and into this field. So that is why we comment and we have a look at that. Now, if you look at the charges that he is facing, and you look at the severity of those charges, and you look at the deal that's been cut with him, the two doesn't add up. And and I think that was a sentiment also of the judgment by the magistrate, and that he rejected it. So now I think he's back to the drawing board for IDAC, and they will have to either, if they want to go to a higher court, but I think they will be very cautious to do so, and they will maybe negotiate a plea bargain with him, because at the end of the day, he's going to strengthen their case. But also, you cannot rely just on one witness, especially if he's a whistleblower, and especially if he's now became a state witness. At the end of the day, when a witness turns state witness, after the trial, after his testimony, the judge or the magistrate will decide whether he can actually justify his input and whether it contributed enough for this bargain to actually to go through. So there are various variables there, and also, it's very easy for someone to come to as a witness and then make a lot of allegations. Whatever he's going to allege, he has to prove. And that is going to take a long. If you look at the long list of names that he's implicating there, that's the one question. The other question that we ask is, are those all the names, or did they select a few names because of agendas? So we will still have to find out what is happening there. As you said, it is developing. We do not have a lot of information, but those are just some of the observations that we made. I don't know what you think, Richard.
I fully agree, Willem. I mean, you the expert in that space, right? But from my side, I would say, in full agreement. It goes back to the drawing board, and once again, I think I'm talking probably in the mind of the public. It would be, oh, there we go again, the NPA, or IDAC, or under the umbrella of NPA is once again has failed. It's seen as a cross against their name, right? We've seen cases of emanating from the Zondo Commission, and we haven't seen anyone like being prosecuted. I mean, we've heard of cases going into the system and suddenly been rejected by the courts, right, or been struck off the roll, and doesn't create a good perspective or confidence within the NPA. And I think this one is another one which might also damper the citizen concern around the function effectiveness. And it also raises now, was this rushed? Was this plea deal rushed? Was it thought through? Since it's a very highly politicized case as well, televised quite broadly. Everybody watches the Madlanga Commission every day. Most everybody knows about it or about Cat Matlala, right? So it's quite high profile. And once again, there will be a lot of questions now, which I think will make the IDACs and the MPAs work more difficult going forward, because now you have to be like, what's how do you go back to the drawing board on that? And I would say that there's a lot of questions, and we will see definitely a lot of views coming out. Some pro, some will be against, some will bring out various other issues, and I think it will be good to just keep an eye and focus on the facts. I think at the end of the day, very often we have a lot of theories. Everybody has a theory of something, right? But at the end of the day, it's what facts are there. And there's no doubt there is a political battle right above. There is this, it's a highly politicized case. We know there are, if I may use the term, factions, and then we've heard that quite often. But I would say, with the facts on the table, go back to the drawing board and see how best to deal with that. And at the end of the day, it's fear, no fear, no favor, or and deal with it like that, right? And for me, that will be in addition to what Willem has said.
Richard, now that you've mentioned the Madlanga Commission, have you had any update on the condition of General Feroz Khan, the crime intelligence boss who was allegedly targeted in an assassination attempt?
From my side, no. I've just, based on what the media report are, he's recovering or in critical condition, if I may put it this way. And so I think for me, that's as far as I've heard from the current case. Willem, I'm not sure about you if there's any new developments you heard besides, the ones that's ongoing.
Just on that one, I see Jeremy Michaels, the coordinator and the press officer, when he was pushed for that and answers earlier today, he said that at the Madlanga, they work on facts. They're not going to speculate, and so they are waiting. So that is basically what we know about that. It is good because, it doesn't open up the whole situation for speculation and allow the police to do their investigations. If there are theories, they have to test it. If there are any information, they have to investigate it. They have to cut this one to the bone because I think it's in the interest of the rule of law in South Africa.
Indeed. That was Willem Els of the Institute for Security Studies and Richard Chelin, an independent governance expert. Speaking to Biz News, thank you. I'm Chris Steyn.
Start your day a step ahead. Biz News Insider. It delivers the business stories that matter every morning straight to your inbox, sharp, fast, and free. Subscribe now. In uncertain times, good information is priceless. The Biz News Conference is heading back to the Drakensberg. Join me, Alec Hogg, from the 11th to the 14th of August for BNC 9. Champagne Sports Resort, where it all began, and where our community gathers for honest conversations, smart investing insights, and direct access to some of South Africa's sharpest minds. Come and rub shoulders with the best we've got. 28 keynote speakers, 3 days. Seats are available now. Book your seat by clicking the link in the description.